Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, it's a late night. Well, not really late night, that much anyway, just a little before 7. And a comment that caught my eye because it actually is something of great importance. And I'll read the letter. Well, I'll read the comment. It's very, very short. It says, "Please don't take offense, Terence, but have you ever in your life suffered from anxiety or depression? I do, and I would like to know your answer." Okay, now, am I a counsellor? No, I'm not. Am I a psychologist? No, I'm not. Am I a psychiatrist? No, I'm not. I'm just like everybody else. I have an opinion, but it is based on some experience, because as I replied to this sender, let me see, I think it was Doug. He won't mind because the comment was, well, let me see. Now I've lost the comment. Well, it doesn't matter because the sender will know. So, why would I consider that I have anything to say on this? Well, when I was 15 and a half, when I was 15 I left school, so with what could hardly be called an education in a secondary modern school in, let me say, the slum area of Manchester in Hume. I went to St Wilfrid's Secondary Modern School. Hardly a place to receive, it was a Catholic school, hardly a place to receive any kind of education. And anyway, I went back and forth between that school because my parents moved around a lot. So my education, which was already just a rag, ended up in tatters anyway. So when I left school at 15, at first I just went into a clothing shop and I used to pack boxes, and then I graduated then to working a sewing machine and working on the goods that they made, raincoats at the time, and I managed to make a great success of myself, making a great lash up of it. So after that I got a good job. I actually wanted to have a job repairing musical instruments because a local shop that sold musical instruments that I used to go and look at and go, ooh ah, could if only, were looking for apprentices. That was a funny thing at the time, that they actually took you in, and for 6 years you learned what you were supposed to be doing, a skill. My father said, no, you don't want to do that, that's not a proper job, is it? Repairing instruments, who's going to want that? So when it came up that they were advertising for coal miners, I went into the coal mines. Now, the coal mines, I never actually did a job. I never worked as a coal miner. I can't boast that. Coal miners are very, very special people. They go down and, make no mistake, they risk their lives every day. Every day. But what I did was, I did my training in Robin Hood Pit, which was north of Manchester. I made some great friends. We were, I believe from memory now, it's all in the very distant past, about 1900 and frozen to death, which is when I did my training. But I did my training and was fully qualified to go out and work on haulage, which was taking the tubs, as they're called, those little containers for shipping coal from the coal face up to the surface. And I would have been working down at the bottom of the pit, where the tubs would be coming up in lines and they'd have to be separated and loaded into the cage, and that would have been my job, and I was fully trained to do that. So that was my first taste of adulthood. We didn't have any, as a trainee, we didn't have any wash facilities. We used to go home in the dust that we gathered in a day's work of learning what to do. I had sobering moments of reality that came to me when I was told by instructors, I was told how to do my job by instructors that had missing fingers and missing thumbs and faces that had blue scars along them where they'd been hit or received injuries and then been at the bottom of the pit for several hours while the coal dust seeped into the wound and the scars were blue. So you always knew a coal miner by these blue scars. And I realized then in a flash of brilliance that this probably wasn't what I was going to do. So I then leapt, as they say, from the cooking pot into the fire, and I joined the army. Now the army, for someone like me with an absolute abhorrence of authority and being told what to do, and I hadn't really thought it through, because my father wrote to the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders bandmaster and said, would you take my son as a band boy? Yep. From the cooking pot into the fire. And I signed on for 6 years. What they sort of glossed over was that the 6 years wouldn't start until I was 18, and there I was at the ripe old age of 15 and a half. So I was only 16 when I was serving in Berlin with the band of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, and later I was sent back to Scotland to a boys' school there to get some tuition. Well, what happened then was that I thought it was going to get better, as I've said in another video. I thought it was going to get better, and it was with something of a shock, enough to bring tears to your eyes, that it wasn't going to get better. If anything, after a year, it was just going to continue getting worse, because what you had was, and very quickly I realized this, that there are what are called punishers in the army, and this is people with a great deal to be grateful for and nothing that they can see to be thankful for. If that's not a contradiction, it's not actually, it's just one of life's great ironies. They can't actually survive outside, being very short on brain cells that can be interconnected to make decisions. So what they do is, with people like that in the army, they promote them to a rank, and then they can punish whoever they want, and it usually was with people like me who were bucking the system all the time. So what do I know about depression? Well, after 1 year and 7.5 years to go, I suddenly realized I wasn't going to be able to get out. So I know a little bit about being in a situation in which you cannot move. You can't get out of it. And believe me, I tried, but that's a whole other series of videos, believe me, on what I did do to try and get out. What the question is, really, is it's not so much the question to me is not so much have I suffered depression, have I suffered anxiety. It's what do you do about it? Now, I'm sure that you can go on and you can talk to someone who has been fully trained on how to deal with these things. I was always of the impression, when learning how to play the trombone, a friend of mine said, yes, you wouldn't make a very good teacher of the trombone because you never had any problems playing. In fact, I remember my friend Howard, who I've also talked about, the funniest guy that I've ever met, naturally funniest guy, and the most lovable friend that you could imagine. And he was very funny. But He was a hopeless trombone player. He was a failed trombone player. He was a nearly almost trombone player. He was someone, if he worked hard 12 hours a day for the next 4 or 5 years, he could soar up into the dizzy heights of average. So he used to ask me, well, what do you... He had questions for which I never knew there was an answer. Well, when you put your mouth to the... Here's a mouthpiece. So when you put your mouth, he would ask me, when you put your mouth to the mouthpiece like this, do you put the teeth up here? Or do you go... you do... I said, just put the bloody thing to your mouth and blow. It's not that hard. So, excuse me. Yes, dear.
Sorry.
Sometimes I have a wife who, in spite of the fact that she knows I'm making a video, likes to talk to me. Anyway, do you understand what I'm saying? I was not in a good position to teach because for whatever reason, I was blessed when it came to playing the trombone. I was not blessed. I used to pick up other instruments, which you can do in the army. You can go to the band. You can go to the band room, and you can take out any instrument that you want and try it and see if you could do it. You could probably get lessons from the other guys in the band. I took out a flute, couldn't get a note out of it. It used to just sound like this. That was as good as it got. And that was on a good day. I took out a double bass and it went umpa, umpa, and I thought this is not a great future for me. And then I did other instruments. I took out the saxophone. Saxophone later became the instrument that I used to hate, because saxophone, according to a friend of mine, Shay, was the easiest instrument in the world to play. And because of that, people took up the saxophone and they were able to play jazz, and they were able to just play and play. So you get we used to have a man, Rex, who came in, and he was the ultimate what was that show? I think it was Benny Hill. And Benny Hill used to have a saxophone playing. And we used to have that man come into the band, and on certain occasions, and if we needed to fill, the band leader would just turn to him and say, Rex, can you do... I used to think that he asked him, can you do 3 yards of jazz, please? And he would say, certainly. 1, 2, 3. It went on, and it was a mindless instrument to me. And they always are fiddling about with their reeds, honking, what I call honking. And they test the reed, and then they shave it, and then they put it back on, and then they lick it. And it was disgusting to me. I'm not a great lover, as you've guessed, even though I hide it well. I'm not a great lover of saxophones. So, what do I know about getting depressed? I've gone off the subject again, which was a very depressing thing when you're trying to focus your mind. Here's what I did to deal with the fact that I had an almost seemingly endless amount of time to serve in a life that I just detested. I found a way to put myself at cause. Now, one of the things about depression, one of the things about anxiety, is that you feel powerless. I hope, my friend that I'm talking to now, you will agree. You feel powerless. You feel that there's no point in anything. You feel that there's nothing that you can do. There is a lot that you can do. The first thing to do is to just touch your surroundings. You have to get yourself into the place that you're supposed to be, which is here. So many times people who are depressed, they're not here, they're over there. And the fact is that, scientifically speaking, you can't be over there. You have to be here. So getting here becomes very important. Now, the other thing about being depressed and anxious is that you feel that you cannot be helped. What can anybody do? You can't do anything for me because I suffer from depression. I'm not trivializing this, by the way. I'm just trying to lighten the load. When you feel that way, what should you do? I recently told you about a man, John, who suffered a great loss, a crippling, emotional, spiritual loss that, in his own words, drove him to the couch. And no, it wasn't the casting couch, and it wasn't the couch that you sit on when you go to a psychiatrist. It was his living room couch, and it was placed in front of the television. And he spent 2 years sitting on that couch, watching football, watching movies, watching soap operas, watching anything that came on the box. So he was completely at the effect of the TV. It was like the TV had said to him, hey, just sit there, okay? I'm in charge. 2 years. Now, whatever it was that appealed to him in some way about something that Beth and I had put on video, I don't know. I don't know what it was. But he wrote to me and he said, I want to thank you for helping me to get back my life. And then he told me the story that I've just told you. Once he did that, what do you think he did? Now, this is interesting. He then sought to help others. Now, I think that this is so important, is that so many times we ignore that very sage advice that comes with old wives' tales, old folklore, old traditional stories of whatever country it is that I've in. The stitch in time saves 9 type of story. When you feel that you've got no friends, actually you're probably right. You haven't got any friends. Well, if you want some friends, go out and be a friend. One thing that is for certain, if you're feeling bad, somebody out there is feeling a lot worse. So, you go out, and if all that you can do is put your hand on the shoulder of someone who is sitting alone in McDonald's and say, hi, how's it doing? How's the burger? If that's all that you can do, then go out and do that. See how many shoulders you can put on. See how many times you can ask, how's the hamburger? You can vary this sometimes by saying, how's the chicken nuggets? The menu is endless for helping. In time, it will grow to more than that, because somebody is going to look up at you and say, thank you for asking. Actually, I was feeling pretty lousy before you said, how's it going? And then you sit down and you say, well, you know what? I've been having a pretty lousy time myself. Why don't you tell me about yours and I'll tell you about mine? And then it begins. And somebody looks to you for help. And in doing that, they empower you. Because now they've said, you look like you're doing better than me. Can you just give me a hand up? And then you find the power of listening. all you have to do then, as they would say in the north of England, is shut your gob and listen. And that's what you do. And you listen. Now, I've told this story before as well. It's an old man thing, okay? They tell the same stories, but sometimes the good stories illustrate a particular point so very well. I met this person, this woman. I met this woman in California in passing, and she was at the same place that I was visiting, and I said hello, and we were introduced by the proprietor of the place that we were at. And when we walked out to the parking lot together, and as a gentlemanly thing, I walked her to her car, and in doing that, she happened to say that she had a project that she was working on. It was a program for young teenage girls who had somehow got lost, and she had developed this program. It was her dream. She developed this program which would challenge the girls. You know, this has become a fairly common thing now, that they have these programs that will challenge teenagers, and they take them and they've worked all the thing out. But at the time, this was new to me, and I said, that is really fascinating. Can I interview you sometime? Because at that time I was beginning to write a lot more, and I thought maybe I could do some interviews, and who knows, maybe sell them. So I thought, this woman is interesting, and we made an appointment, and I went along to her house, and we just sat and talked. Well, she talked, I didn't talk. But here's the difference, is that I didn't, as she talked, I didn't glaze over and think to myself, I wish she'd stop prattling on so that I could say what I've just been thinking about for the last 5 minutes. I really listened. And sometimes I didn't quite get what she had said. So I said, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Can you tell me again? And she would tell me again, and and finally I would say, I got it. But then sometimes she would say, you know, have you really understood that? I'd say, do you think I have understood it? And she'd say, well, no. So I said, let's go back again. Let's go back and tell me. And she went back and she told me. And then she's looking at my face all the time, she says. And I say to her, did I get it? Do you feel I got it? And she would immediately, the face would clear, and she'd say, yes, thank you. Now, all I did for perhaps a couple of hours or more, I listened. And I listened and listened really well. And at the end of it, as I was leaving, I said, thank you for sharing all of that to me, with me. And she said, no, you should not thank me. I should thank you, because I have never in my life felt so completely understood. What did I do? I didn't really do anything, did I? I just sat and listened and understood. Did I agree? No. Did I pat her on the back? No. Did I tell her she was wonderful? No. I just listened. So, if it is that you are suffering depression, the first thing to do is touch the walls around you and get yourself here. And then find someone that you can help. Now, it doesn't have to be someone who is having a rough time more than you. It doesn't have to be someone who can probably get themselves out of a jam. It doesn't have to be someone that you have to lend money to, but you can go along and listen. And you can develop the skill of listening. And in developing the skill of listening, you will realize that your story is not unusual. You're not special. I'm not saying that in a derogatory sort of, well, there's nothing special about you, sunshine, is there? I'm trying to tell you that all of your problems, everybody's been through them at some point, to some degree, before. So, by listening to others, you kind of come away with the idea, oh, you know what, actually compared to him, I'm not doing too bad. Or they'll say something, and you'll say, that's how I feel. So, if you're suffering from depression, feeling alone, feeling abandoned, feeling anxious, feeling afraid, go out and find someone that just needs to have someone to talk to. And then listen. You don't have to give sage advice. You don't have to be better than that person. You don't have to feel helpless. Oh, well, I feel the same way, so we're not any better off, are we? No, you don't have to do that. You can just listen. And you can just help just by doing that. So how does this relate to me and how I handled depression? What I did was I fought what I thought was the source of my unhappiness, and that was the bloody army. And I fought them on the only terms that I could. If they, for instance, if they were treating me as if I were stupid, I would go along with that stupid. Yes, sir, sorry, sir, I can't understand what you're saying, because I'm stupid, aren't I? And I would do that. I was walking along once, and the building next to me was the officers' mess, where the officers dined in very good comfort, and said, oh, how are you? Oh, jolly good, yes. And stuff like that, that officers say to each other. And so the officer's window and the dining room was at this level. And then up there, at that level, was another officer. And he said, hey, you! Yes, sir. Because I was stupid. Yes, sir, what? What? And he said, knock on that window. Knock on that window. Meaning to any intelligent person that I was supposed to knock on the window and get the attention of the officer that was in there saying, oh, how are you, Harvey? And say, this person up there, sir, wants to talk to you. But I'm stupid, ain't I? So I went to the window and I knocked on the window and then I walked away. And the officer up there says, you bloody fool, what's the matter with you? Tell him that I want you to... I didn't know that, sir, because I'm stupid. And then I walked away, and in some small way, with my twisted sense of humour, I felt that I'd won. Life is about winning. And right now, if you're depressed, you've lost the idea, lost the concept that you can win. Find a way that you can win. Some small way. Don't forget the idea of the wedge. And a wedge is something that starts off very, very thin like this. And then it gradually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Start off with the thin end of the wedge and do a small thing. Maybe it's touching somebody on the shoulder and saying, how's the burger? Maybe it's just as little as saying hello to someone who thinks that they're invisible because nobody ever says hello to them. And do that small thing. And then as the wedge begins to get bigger, you will gradually start to feel that maybe there's something that you can do. Write to me again. I'll always be happy to hear from you, and hopefully that you have been able to apply some of the things that helped me to succeed in not being brought down by the idea that I had 7.5 bloody years to do in the army. That was a tough one for me, and it hurt, and I was very unhappy for a long time until I hit on how I could make something in my life mean something to me, how I could be the cause of a good feeling in my own life, even though I was in the army. Try it and get back to me. Try one small thing and get back to me. Talk to you later. Thanks for looking in. This was A Foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.